Can you hear me now? Okay. All right, I think that we're going to get started. We have one member who is not present yet, but she may be joining us, hopefully. So I'm going to call this, as soon as I find my agenda, to call this meeting to order at 6:35. And are there any announcements? All right, seeing none. Public appearances? No public appearances. So we will go into closed session now. This is closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957B to discuss public employee evaluation, library director interim.
That was fun.
Frozen building project updates.
Any suggestions?
This, she's going to put in here. There was something.
Here we go.
Are we ready?
Trying to make your open house this year. Oh, good.
All right. I'll call us back to order at 7:33. And I will report pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.1. The commission met with the interim director and discussed her evaluation, and no decisions were made at the meeting. So that takes us to item 6, library advisory boards and friends of the library. 6.1, and seeing nobody present to make a report. Now we turn to item 7, special presentation. 7.1, the report on the state library statistics. Ms. Demapan.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jaylene Demapan, and this evening I will be providing you with the Sonoma County Library's survey information as submitted to the State Library. This presentation includes a comparison analysis covering the last 2 reporting periods, and the reporting periods usually run from July 1st to June 30th every year. Please refer to your packets, page number 5, and if you don't have that, I did bring some extra copies, so perfect. So please note that this report is compiled based on specific questions and instructions posed by the State Library. Additionally, I just wanted to share with you all, I may require some assistance from management to further address any questions that you may have that go beyond my knowledge. It's specific to divisions. It was a collaborative effort between other divisions that we have at the library. So before we dive into the statistics, I wanted to provide you all with a bit of background regarding the survey. So annually, the State Library collects California Library Statistics, which is a compilation of statistics data from public libraries throughout the state. A couple of fun facts that I wanted to share with you that I did get from the State Library website is there's 1,119 libraries in the state of California, 16,598 staff, and about 1,700 volunteer FTE per week. I thought that was very interesting. And in terms of library visits to the state, 154,544,298 people that visit the libraries throughout the state. So that was pretty impressive. The California Public Library data is then reported to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS, which is a source of federal support for the nation's approximately 123,000 libraries and 35,000 museums. The data is used to improve program planning and efficiency, and it's vital to measuring local success and demonstrates the need for ongoing federal investment in California libraries. The data is also used as part of a national report coordinated by the IMLS. When libraries don't participate in the National Public Library Survey, results are skewed, presenting an incomplete picture of the scope of library services. So non-participation in the annual California Public Survey results in ineligibility to receive Library Services Technology Act, LSTA grant funding. This requirement was enforced as a new policy during reporting period 2015-16, which was last year, and that was primarily to encourage participation by all public libraries throughout the state. Right. Moving right along. So a few sections that we're going to be covering tonight is population and outlets, staff, income, expenditures, collections, services, circulation, programs, electronic resource usage, branches and stations, and then toward the end, we'll just do a recap of what we've gone through. So in terms of population, this section is a pre-populated field by the CSL based on California Department of Finance Demographic Research Report. It's certified annually by the state librarian, usually June 1st. And as you can see here, there's been an increase by 2% in comparing last reporting period to this reporting period. I did include the 2010 census statistics for you all to be able to look at as well. As we all know, that gets updated every 10 years, as well as the 2016 census estimates. So it kind of gives you an idea of the reporting, current census estimate reporting, and what was reported by the California Department of Finance Demographic. So in terms of children 5 years and under and children ages 5 to 14, these areas were not pre-populated by the state library, so we did provide them with 2016 census estimates. So as you can see here, with children 5 years and under, there was a 7% decline. And in terms of children 5 to 14, there was a 1% decline. And that's comparing 2010 census to 2016 census estimates. In terms of outlets, there's been a 6% increase of registered users as of June 30th in comparison to last year, a 25% increase in children borrowers ages 0 to 14. We have a total of 15 branches and stations, so outlets in total, and there's been no changes in total square footage. We did have the Cloverdale refresh that was done last year. However, there was no additional square footage added to that. Staff. Total count of full and part-time employees, there was a 13% increase. We went from 163 last reporting period to 187. In terms of staff FTE, there's been a 17% increase, and as you can see, it breaks down in terms of librarians and all support staff. We've had an increase of 21% in terms of volunteers. Okay, as far as income for operational expenses, there's been a 6% increase, and that covers local government, any state, federal funds, and other income, and a 92% increase for capital outlay. Sure. Commissioner Hauser? That is correct. That's a 92% increase. Oh, I'm sorry. That, apparently so. My apologies. That's definitely a much larger increase. So I will make that correction. Thank you for pointing that out. Definitely much more than that. The 81,000 is accurate. Yes, that is accurate.
Turn on your mic for a minute, because we can tell you what that represents. Turn on my mic, Jane. So that increase in capital outlay is twofold. One is the primarily the work we did at the Cloverdale branch, and then and the library infrastructure.
Yeah, it was the percentage that's not. It's the percentage that's off.
Okay.
So my apologies. Okay, and this will apply here as well, Commissioner Hauser, in terms of the capital. Expenditures, standard operating, there's been an 11% increase, and that addresses staff collections and all other. There's been incorrectly a 92% increase. That needs to be corrected. And specific increases in terms of preservation, children's materials, and adult literacy, there's been a 17% increase there. Collections. Total books held as of June 30th. There's been a 2% decrease. And within the total books held, I just thought I'd share with you, there's been about 50,000 increase in children's books, and young adults about a $500 increase. 50 items, but 50 books increase in young adults. There's been a 13% increase in government documents and separate collections, a decrease of 2% in total print materials, an increase of 42% in electronic books, an increase of 16% in physical audio materials, and a 24% increase in downloadable audio materials. So this continues collections in terms of physical video materials, about a 1% increase. Downloadable audio video materials, about a 17% increase. Print serial subscriptions, 16% increase. Number of records in library catalog as of June 30th, a 2% increase. Number of electronic collections, 13% increase. And in terms of equipment collection, there wasn't anything reported last reporting period, so this year we did report 31, so there really isn't a comparison there. Sure.
What is equipment collection? Give me examples of what those are.
Jamie, may I? Thank you.
Those would include our DIY toolkits and things like tablets that circulate.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, in terms of services, hours open, we've had a 5% increase, a 2% increase in library visits, a 14% increase in reference questions, and these reference questions are not including any directional questions, such as where's the restroom, things like that. So that's not included in these statistics. They're very clear on their instructions about what to and what not to include. So, and technology assistance, that's increased by 64%. Also, this is based on instruction and assistance in using information, hardware, software, online. Again, not directional.
I was going to ask you that question. Is that so? That's a big increase from 2015, 16.
It is.
And that's due to more instruction, you said? Is that?
I would say,
Yeah.
Vicki, would you like to address that?
I would. This is
you.
like the Genius Bar at the Apple Store, right? So this is what your modern public library is doing, is becoming the Genius Bar for all kinds of equipment, whether it's a smartphone running the iOS or an Android phone, tablets, laptops, connecting to the Wi-Fi, charging their devices, that sort of thing. So how do I download Hoopla? How do I download an audio ebook from Access 360? I mean, the beat goes on.
And how do people ask those questions? Is it in the library, face-to-face, or is it through email, or is it?
It's all of the above. The reference staff, the library associates, all in person help with those things. In the Petaluma Library, they have a program where you can, and we're trying to get this pushed out broader, district-wide, where you can actually make an appointment with the librarian to sit down and go through your device and get help with various kinds of technology questions that you have. And also, it includes things like learning about technology. We have online resources such as lynda.com to help you increase your technical skills. So they really run the gamut. We also get questions through the Ask Us, which is the email reference service that we are running. I get phone calls on a regular basis. I get personal emails. So it really is a lot of different ways in which people contact us and ask.
Great service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Vicki. Circulation. So there's been a 3% decrease in circulation. However, I did want to point out that in terms of electronic material circulation, as you can see on the chart here, it's increased by almost 87,000. So that's just something to note. That's definitely very popular, electronic materials. Physical item circulation, that's where the decrease was. As you can see, it went from 3 million to about 2.87 million. There's been a decrease by 14% in loans to others. This is the ILL, and a 1% increase loans received. The total electronic content used is increased by 16%, and total collection use is a decrease by 2%.
Sorry, I just wondered if in the interest of time, and I apologize for this, but the highlights, maybe we could just see if people have questions about particular areas.
Absolutely.
And then hit the summary at the end. And again, I apologize. I think our closed session meeting went a little longer than we had anticipated. But I really appreciate this. I know the commission's been waiting to see this report. I have one quick question about it in general, and that is I saw that the closing date for getting the information to the state library was October 30th.
That is correct.
So have they given you an idea of when all of them will be out there so we could see how we're compared to other systems?
No, actually I haven't heard. However, I did visit the website, and right now they do have the 15-16 posted. It takes time for them to compile all the information from 16-17.
So it could be some months, really.
I possibly, but I can certainly keep you posted. And
okay, that would be great. So I wanted to, before we jump to the summary comparison highlights, if anybody had any particular questions about any other page before that, and if you wanted to ask now, but keep in mind in the interest of time. Okay, Barbara.
That's quick. Under books, total books, this is under collections, total books. Is that E and print books?
What page?
I don't know, it's not numbered. Oh, 13. Sorry, I can't see.
No, I don't believe this includes the electronic books, but do you?
It's print material.
If it's
Line 3 just says print material.
The total books held as of June 30th, is that what you're asking?
well, it's kind of confusing. The top line says total books held 686,049, and then skip a line, and then total print materials 686, which is a different number.
Yeah, but that's the total of the first two lines to get it.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Forget it. Okay, stupid question.
Includes a government document.
Okay. Then I had two other quick questions. On the interlibrary loans, we are always a net borrower than a lender. And I was just wondering if we have examined why, if maybe there's something missing in our collection or why that actually happens.
I'm going to ask Jamie if she could address that.
Yes, that has been our pattern for a number of years, and this year is no different. Have we examined why? Yes. We are looking into other ways of sharing resources. Specifically, next fiscal year, we're hoping to implement a program called Link Plus. I don't want to go into too much detail, but we are looking at ways to improve that figure.
So it has been holes in our collection rather than just we have more borrowers on our side.
Our patrons are requesting materials from other library systems that we don't own more than we're lending out.
Okay, thank you. And I had one more comment, and I thought it was fantastic news about how huge increase in our children borrowers 0 to 14. I thought that was incredible. It means we're doing some collection of things differently to get that many different new borrowers.
Okay, well, if people think of other questions, but if you want to go to the summary reports, and then if Director Gray has any comments about the report, that would be great.
Sure. In terms of the summary comparison highlights, it's really just a rephrasing of what I've already shared with you all. So what I'd like to do is just go ahead and continue on from perhaps programs where we left off. So in terms of programs, there's been a 16% increase and an 8% increase in attendance. What's interesting here is the electronic resource usage That's increased by 37%. So it really shows us a clear picture of how much our wireless is being used. And then the last thing that I did want to close and share with you all is we did also report the sales tax measure success, which is a requested referenda on the survey itself. So that was reported. Other than that, does anyone have any other questions?
Do you have any comments, Tracy?
Tracy?
Sure, I'll make a couple quick comments. Firstly, I wanted to thank the staff, all of the division managers, everyone here, Jaylene, for putting this together. It's a huge endeavor. So I want to thank them for their hard work and putting this together, especially as the deadline approached right around the fires, but we got it in on time. Just a couple points that I saw with the collection. It's pretty standard throughout the country with libraries. Electronic resources are increasing. Print is typically going down 1 to 2% on average in a lot of libraries. Jamie and I have talked about, and OMT, we talked at a couple meetings ago about how we can spruce up our collection, weed our collection. There's been proven studies that the more appealing your collection looks, that it will actually, the circulation will increase. So we're talking about ways to do that, to enhance the collection, to get it circulating more as well. So those were.
And I think we have an opportunity to hear about that tonight a little bit from Jamie Anderson and the collection materials support. There's some talk, you talked about some software that you're going to use to help beef up the collections and the weeding of old and yeah. So anyway, thank you very much. Any other questions from the commission? Members of the audience?
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Jaylene. Okay, that takes us to the next report is 7.2, Regional Parks Discovery PAC Program and Sonoma County Library Partnership.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Angelina. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator, and I'm here to share with you a new program that we'll be offering in January, and it's in partnership with the Sonoma County Regional Parks. We've called it the Regional Parks Discovery Pack, and I brought a pack to share with you. So this will be something, like we said, with the equipment that you'll be able to check out from your local library. As you'll see, I have a sheet here that has some information about the program. So this will be out 14 of our library locations. So the pack itself is a REI backpack. We got some donated by REI and then some we purchased ourselves. It has a little emblem here so you know what it is, in partnership with the regional parks and library. And inside, one of the items, so there are items in here that folks will be able to keep and some that they will have to return, similar to how we have done our DIY toolkits. It's a little bit smaller than the toolkit. So you'll get in the folder, when you open it up, on the left-hand side are items that are to be returned. This is our first sample, so we will have a full list of items. So when folks check it out, they'll kind of be able to checklist and see which items they need to return. And then on the right-hand side are items that they'll get to keep. So on the left-hand side is a vehicle entry pass. This will get you into all of the Sonoma County parks free of charge. So with this, it pays for your parking. We have trail games in English and Spanish. So for families or those who'd like to do those while they're in the parks. These have all of the trail challenge from Sonoma County Regional Parks in English and Spanish, so they can kind of choose which park and trail they'd like to explore. And then these two here are kind of different depending on the season, but for right now it's different hiking hints, and it's in English and Spanish, and then animal tracks. So if they'd like to go on a hike, they can identify different animals, and then hawks. So as I said, this is relevant for this season. And then, once spring has set, then they'll have wildflowers. So these will kind of change based on what is happening that season. And then on the left-hand side, items that the patron will be able to keep include different maps, junior ranger, things for the kids, and then different events and information about the Parks Department. And in addition, we have this book that will stay with the pack, and it's an adventure book. So if people check it out, they can choose to write something about a trail, maybe some tips. They can choose to draw a picture. So just we'll kind of be able to keep a little adventure book so we could see what folks are using them for. As you'll see in the information, in the one-pager that I gave you, just some highlights of the pack themselves. They are available for checkout for 1 week, which is a little different than some of our other items are 3 weeks. These will be available for 1 week, 7 days. They are non-renewable and you can't request them. So we will keep a manual wait list at the branches, but it's just a little too difficult if I said I want it on this one Saturday and somebody, keeps it or doesn't turn it back. We just didn't want to run into any issues that we may run into if people are requesting them on certain days and it's not returned in time. The overdue fine is the same as most other formats, so 25 cents a day, $10 maximum. If it is lost, stolen, or not returned, there is a fine of $70, which is more expensive than we're used to, but that's the price of the entry, the vehicle entry pass. So it'd just be paying for a new one of those. And then, as I said, they'll be distributed at all of our branches. So at some of our larger branches, they'll get 3 packs. Other branches will get 2. Our smaller stations will get 1. And that's something that we'll be working with the Parks Department, kind of assessing the program after we've implemented it for 3 months and then 6 months, and then we can decide if there's a huge amount of interest, looking at different areas where we can expand if the need is really great. The intention behind the partnership in making these packs available is just to allow folks the opportunity to remove any barriers in being able to explore our county parks. And then for families who are maybe interested in, maybe wanting to get their own vehicle entry pass or parks membership, this is kind of first step. They can come check one out with their library card, be able to explore and see if that's something that's right for their family. Are there any questions?
Great. Any quick comments or questions?
Quick comment, just as another great example of a partnership with another public agency, and to commend Angelina on doing this and all the positive press we've been given. And many of our programs are being announced in things like League of Women Voters, LOCIEN, Latino Service Providers. I open up those newsletters and I see something about the library every time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, it sounds great. Thank you very much, Angelina.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Comments from the audience? Okay, so we will move on to item 8.1, Commissioner Reports, and I did want to take a moment first to apologize to our newest commissioner for not announcing your presence at the announcement section, but please welcome Carla Howell, who is the City of Healdsburg appointed commissioner, and I wanted to welcome you on behalf of the commission. We're very happy to have you, and give you an opportunity to have the first speaking position here to tell us just a little bit about yourself and
a little bit about me. I'm the executive director of the Healdsburg Chamber of Commerce, previously executive director in Cloverdale, and previous to that, Rohnert Park. I spent 5 years in Rohnert Park, 5 years in Cloverdale, and I've been 5 years in Healdsburg, and I think this is kind of winding down eventually. I spent 8 years on the City Council in Healdsburg and 12 years before that on the Planning Commission, so I'm used to coming to meetings.
That's a good thing. All right, thank you very much. And so Commissioner Heavenridge, do you have a report to give us?
I was unable to attend the Guerneville Lab, so I'm afraid I don't. Thank you.
Commissioner May.
Our lab met, and they're getting excited about the next refresh being the next in line. We have some donations, some money from our various sources that'll help contribute to that. We're also excited about, I can't remember what number we're on, LumaCon, which is coming up in the, as they say, it's the weekend before Super Bowl. So it's the Saturday, the last Saturday in January. And one of the things that I found really wonderful in the announcements and so forth was that at least one of the high schools in town has LumaCon on its announcements every day. So part of that's involved with the partnership between the high school librarians and the sponsorship of LumaCon, but I think it's another example of how the library is becoming a vibrant resource in the community, especially for those for the teenage and tweens. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Ebright.
Thank you. I attended the Santa Rosa Lab meeting on November 29th. They did not have a quorum, so no action items were taken. But maybe because of that, there was a fairly robust discussion on recruitment, and some good ideas came up. One of them was working with the family engagement coordinator from the schools to see about getting additional lab members there. One of the things that the libraries had was when the libraries reopened after the fires were, we talked about the welcome back tables and how successful those were for staff and for patrons as they entered the libraries. And I think that is all I have to comment on. Thank you.
Thank you. The Sebastopol Library Advisory Board meets this week. The Friends just completed their annual children's book sale this weekend, and that's all I have to report right now.
I pass.
I had a few things. I attended Keogh's retirement party, and as well as some other folks here. Thought it was a fantastic send-off to Keogh. I again applaud her 41 years with the library, and I thought that party was relative to a long tenure of hers. It was a great turnout, and obviously everybody loved and respected her. And I also wanted to thank the staff who did such a great job organizing that event. I'm going to make a few prepared remarks to our Rohnert Park City Council next Tuesday on the 12th. And I'm going to talk about some of these great things, the backpack and the parks and the relationships and the virtual reality machine and just some of the great things that are going on, just to highlight some of the new and vibrant additions we're adding to the community. Last week I visited the San Rafael Library, and I thought the thing I brought home was how great our library is, relatively to speaking. So that was an interesting visit. Also, I'm representing the library this Wednesday at the Chamber of Commerce, and I hope that as the year unfolds, we'll be actually making a presentation there, hopefully with our branch manager. And lastly, most of the events that are happening in Rohnert Park are at the what's the name of the community square that's right next to our library. And on Saturday was the Christmas tree lighting, and it was a huge big kind of fair and all kinds of booths, and it was really cool. And Santa came and everything. Anyway, I was standing next to this little girl, and this is, of course, right next to the library. I was standing next to this little girl, and she looked up at her mom and said, "Mommy, I want to go to the library." And I thought, yeah. So much for Santa Claus. She went to the library. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
No report.
The town of Windsor is having their big tree ceremony for Christmas this Thursday night starting at 5. There's like 200 trees that various groups have decorated, including one from the Windsor Library. The forum room and the lobby of the Windsor Library will be used as part of, there'll be things going on in those rooms of the library at this event. Santa comes on a fire truck, choirs, all the usual Christmas stuff. That's it.
I'm continuing to research on the legislative process, so maybe I can understand the SCA3 going through its things and be a little on the proactive side. I finished up the edX advocacy class, and I've registered and just started the budget one. Continuing to focus on the SOPs. I am making progress, although every once in a while I just have to put it down because I get caught in the weeds and I can't even think at that point. I went to a home energy workshop that was held at the Cloverdale Library. It was really interesting. Because of my background, I didn't learn anything new, but it was fun to watch the questions and listen to the people who interacted with the presenters. There's going to be a climate change together at the table during January, so we need to keep our eyes out for that, and I'd like to go to one of those. In the meantime, we're going to be holding the advocacy meeting up in Cloverdale next Monday so that we can attend the Together at the Table on immigration, because we're looking at possibly doing a resolution of some kind on DACA and being California being a sanctuary state. The Friends meeting held their annual meeting last month, but I wasn't able to go because it was the night of the commission meeting. But I think from what the reports I've gotten from different people, they're beginning to understand the changes that are occurring, and they're beginning to move with them and feel fairly good about some of the evolving interactions between the library and the Friends. So I was kind of pleased with that because I was worried about it. And the Cloverdale Lab, it's meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. and I will be there, as will probably a couple of other people in the auditorium. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll move to item 8.2.1, director evaluation. We just completed the director's 6-month interim director evaluation. So that takes us to 8.2.2, which is the Finance Committee report.
Yes, thank you. The Finance Committee met November 13th in the library conference room. All the commissioners on the committee were present. That's Mackenzie, Whistler, Neff, Hauser, and Foxen, as well as the interim director and the CFO. We did not have any members of the public present. We reviewed the monthly reports. We inquired about possible budget adjustments, and were advised by our CFO that none were expected for now, pending changes to tax revenue post-fires. We still don't have enough information on that yet. The Measure Y Oversight Committee met November 8th. There'll be further information about this, but 3 members were not present. The interim director showed the plans for the Runner Park headquarters space and detailed the needs and efficiencies of this new space to the Measure Y Oversight Committee. There will be a new member appointed to this committee by our new Commissioner Howell. And further direction will be needed from the Commission on the allocation of the cost of the new space in Runner Park, if any, to Measure Y funds. We briefly discussed the development of next year's budget, with the process as being on track at this point. The majority of the meeting was spent discussing library leases. We reviewed a spreadsheet of summary information prepared by our interim director, Gray. The discussion will continue at the Finance Committee meeting next month. We also took up the issue of changes to the policy on approval of expenses with reference to our last commission meeting and the blanket purchase orders. This discussion will also continue at our next Finance Committee meeting, which will be Monday, December 18th at 3 o'clock in the Central Library Conference Room. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So 8.2.3, Advocacy Committee report.
We held our meeting on Monday, November 20th. Tim May and I were present, along with Angelina and Tracy. Linda Garcia and Paul Heavenridge called in. We had the election of officers, and I'm continuing as chair, and Tim May as vice chair. Next, we reviewed the roles and responsibilities of the advocacy committee. And if you guys want a copy of it, here's a copy. And I've got some extras for anybody in the audience who wants one. We decided to make 3 changes to it. The first, we're adding a non-commissioner baby recommended by the committee, approved by the commission, and appointed as a member of the Advocacy Public Relations Committee by the chair. This came about because Linda commented that after she left the commission, she'd like to continue to be on the committee. And I don't know, she may be crazy, but who knows. Anyway, so we decided after talking about it to go ahead and add this because I think on some of the committees it's quite appropriate to have some additional people with experience that could help as they move through their specific endeavors or whatever. The second thing we talked about adding was to explore, initiate, and or advocate for state and federal legislative issues as they pertain to libraries. And this has come about a direct result of the SCA 3. And we needed to make a comment and actually have that as a specific role that the advocacy committees played. And as I don't know how many of you know, I'm repeating myself, but the SCA 3 is a piece of legislation that's going to reduce the voting numbers required to 55% for any kind of capital improvement bond or measure that you put through. And that'll make it a lot easier for the various JPAs and various entities to apply for something like that and get it through. It's online with the schools. Schools only have to have a 55% for any capital improvement funds that they go before the voters for. Okay, and the third one was to discuss and develop and recommend to the Commission policies related to the Library Commission and advocacy public relation issues. And since I'm doing the SOPs, I've become acutely aware of policy development, and I can see that some of our future policies are going to be guided by committee issues and committee needs. And so I think enabling the committees to begin to develop the policies and put them before the commission is probably a good route to go. Moving on, the Friends seem to be grappling with what do we do now and how do we do it. And I think with what the interim director is doing and the community engagement coordinator, that they're beginning to get the ideas of how to deal with things. And again, change is always hard. So, that's what they're dealing with. The labs. We have a goal that we would like with the labs, and that's to encourage them to organize and have an all lab day to establish bonds between themselves and lines of communications so that they can kind of be working together but find ways to reach out into their own community and actually be functional, I guess might be a good way to put it. But we need to have a common ground so that they can relate and give us what we need as well as get something that they need for their communities. And of course, the small detail in all of this is that we have to know what we want the labs to do and be able to definitively say it to them and explain it to them. So we have a piece to do before we can even come down on the labs and say, hey, this is what we want you to do. And with our discussions around the foundation, we return to figuring out issues in our relationships with the Sonoma County Public Library Foundation and looking to find a common ground in that relationship. It's a topic that seems to keep coming up. And how do we resolve the disparity in the understandings of what libraries and library foundations mean to each other? And we're beginning to reach out to other libraries and foundations to learn how they do it and what their perspectives are regarding their roles for each. And we need to talk with the foundation and begin building on that. We began developing talking points for lab members, commissioners, and others to use to select when they're meeting with their appointing JPA bodies. The first idea that came up was not just books, which, we've addressed in several ways tonight even. And the second one is the one I keep repeating, is that return on investment is $3 to $5 direct return for every dollar an entity invests in their library. And that does not include the $500 to $1,000 worth of services that an individual gets free. And this benefits not only the individual, but the community as a whole. So that's another one. But then we got sidetracked, which not surprising. And we got talking about our relationships with JPAs and how we can improve on them and kind of resolve some of these points of contention that we have. Then we began kind of running out of time, so we began hurrying on. We did touch on the issue of DACA, and California is a sanctuary state. The library does have a policy regarding inclusivity on the website, but we're talking about possibly having the commission do a resolution to further accentuate that, particularly around DACA and the sanctuary state issues. But we're going, as I said earlier, we're all going to the meeting in Cloverdale to hear what they have to say on the immigration, just to kind of have some more information before we start doing this. And finally, I have a call into Mike McGuire's office to meet with someone regarding the legislative process, in particular that one surrounding the SCA 3, because it's going to come out again in January, and we need to better understand it so we can be proactive rather than reactive. I know I felt like sometimes I was finding out about things like just a few days before I had to do something or it was over and done. So I'm waiting to hear back from the staff person on that. And I guess, are there any questions or comments? Nope. Okay.
And if people have an opportunity to look over the roles and responsibilities, which is very clear cut and nicely done, but if people have comments on that in the future, we will certainly be open to listening to them. All right, thank you very much. So any comments? Okay, so that takes us to 8.2.4, Foundation Liaison. Is that you? Okay, no report. 8.2.5, the Ad Hoc OPEB Retirement Committee. Who's giving this? Is that... Was I supposed to give this report, Ken? Yeah, any of us can.
I can do it.
We'll pipe in if we...
All right. The OPEB committee met, I can't remember the exact date, a couple weeks ago.
Recently.
And it was after we had the actuarial data back from the company that did the actuarial report, and he was also attending the meeting. There were lots of questions. He had run 3 different scenarios that the committee put forth. The first one was to just continue putting $150,000 a year into the OPEB trust. The second one was to put $750,000 per year into the OPEB trust with $1 million deposit next year. And the third scenario was $750,000 per year with a $3 million deposit into. We discussed those quite a bit, came up with a recommendation. I'll be writing that up and bringing it to the to the January commission meeting. And then you can discuss that and take it into consideration as we move into the budget cycle. So, good meeting. It was the last meeting of the committee. There were 3 individuals from the outside that were part of the committee. John Meslin, Larry Kropp, and Darren Jenkins. They were all very helpful, very knowledgeable, and if we have something like this, again, moving forward, it was a good model, I think, to follow. So.
Yeah, and thanks for all the work that you put into that too. I think Barbara and I both agree with you that it was a really good committee and very productive in a relatively short space of time.
Right.
And the actuarial, I forget his name, but he was a good addition.
Yeah,
So.
Nick. That's all I can remember. Nick.
It's going through the Finance Committee, coming up, and then it will come to the Commission the following one. Yeah.
Which takes us, I guess, so Reese, you kind of gave us an update on, you're working on the SOPs, so unless you have something to add to that, I know you and I are going to get together and do some more work on that. So that takes us to Measure Y Oversight Committee, and do you want to weigh in on that too, Ken? That'd be great.
We met with the Measure Y Oversight Committee for the second meeting that we've had in the last 3 or 4 months, 4 months, I guess. It was the first week in November. Not everybody was available to attend, but they thought it was important to meet to get the reports and to start discussing other things, and there was some information that they asked for. I think Helena, Commissioner Whistler mentioned that
wasn't there.
That you did. Okay, that Tracy gave the floor plan of the Roanoke Park headquarters. Everybody on the committee was behind that move, behind getting more space. They realized how tight everything was, and they also suggested that the rent for that headquarters should be part of the Measure Y funding. So we'll take that into consideration as we're developing the budget for next year. That was an important thing to hear from them, but no one questioned it at all.
Do you think the tour of the basement helped with that?
Yeah, I don't know. How many did you take down there?
I took Darren Jenkins down there, Janice Brokaw, and Darren, I took him down as part of OPEB.
Right.
Took Janice Brokaw and then Scott Alonzo down there.
Right.
And it is eye-opening.
Right.
Yeah. And I had suggested at the last meeting that anybody who hasn't been down there, please go down. We'll take them on a tour. But we didn't know, it was surprising the level of support for, but Tracy did a really nice job with, laying everything out and all the stuff that was going to happen, the efficiencies of the deliveries and all that stuff. So they were very clear about the need to do it.
So when is the next meeting?
The next meeting is the first week of February, I believe. We're having them every quarter, a month or about 5 weeks after the quarter ends.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Yep.
So the Ad Hoc Director Search Committee has an item on the agenda tonight. We can talk about that at that point. That takes us to correspondence and press coverage. Were there any questions or comments on anything in that area? Okay, so takes us to item 10, the consent calendar. These are routine financial and administrative actions that may be approved by consensus. Any commission member or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the calendar and have it placed to the action items. Are there any items that any commissioners requesting to be removed? Commissioner Ebert?
I'd like to remove 10.3.
Okay, and that is revised salary schedules for represented, non-represented positions, cost of living adjustments. So that will go down to item 12, action items by motion. All right. These items, the 10.1, regular meeting minutes from November 6, 2017, 10.2, reclassification, the pre-press support tech, and 10.4, approve the appropriation limit for fiscal year 17-18 are on the consent calendar.
I move approval of the consent items.
Second.
All right, so those items are approved. That takes us to item 11.1, the interim director's report.
Okay, I have a few verbal items. So I wanted to point out Scott Alonso, who's the president of the Sonoma County Public Library Foundation, approached me after finding out about Keo's retirement, and he arranged a certificate of recognition from Assemblyman Jim Wood. It was supposed to be presented to her at her retirement, but because of the fires, it got delayed, and I did want to report that that got mailed to her. She sent me a note that she received it, so I just wanted you all to know that that went to her as well as part of her recognition. So I thought that was nice of him to do that. One of the events that I went to, and Commissioner Ebright, I saw him at that, was the Fall Economic Forecast Breakfast on November 17th. Dr. Chris Thornburg from Beacon Economics. This was an event that was planned in October as well and got postponed. He was a very dynamic speaker, I thought, and talked about the federal economy, the state, Sonoma County. I think the major takeaway that I came from that was he stressed housing for Sonoma County as a big need that already existed and is even more so now after the fires. So it was a really neat presentation from him, I thought. And then two of the very fun events I attended this past month was, as I mentioned in my report, the Annalee High School Ethics Studies class that was at Sebastopol. It was great. It was supposed to be 15 minutes. I could have talked to them for an hour. I talked about the role of libraries, and the students had a lot of questions. The teachers had a few questions, and it was great just to see the kids in the library utilizing our resources, having this engagement, and getting to talk to them as well. So that was very fun. And then on the other attendance was the River Friends of the Library. It was their 12th annual Doris Dickinson Young Writers Contest. And she had passed away this year, and she had spent, I think, 20 plus years volunteering at the Guerneville Library. And the event was, they had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders from Guerneville School, Monte Rio High School, or Monte Rio School in Montgomery, and some homeschoolers, and it was their award ceremony. So I got to hand out medals to writers. Supervisor Hopkins was there as well. And it was great to see them, the students with their parents, getting their award. They received awards and a monetary gift. So that was a really fun event. It was Saturday, I want to say November, I think it was the 18th. And then lastly, I had sent an email to everyone. Tomorrow I'll be heading down to Monterey to attend the California Public Employees Labor Relations Association CalPALRO conference. That's where our HR manager is right now. It started today, so I will be meeting her down there tomorrow for a week of programs on human resources, labor relations, all kinds of things. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to thank Ken will be attending tomorrow's Cloverdale Lab and Healdsburg Friends meeting. Jamie will be attending the lab meeting Wednesday in Sebastopol, and Vicki will be attending the Healdsburg lab meeting on Thursday. So I want to thank them for attending. So you'll see them at the meetings this week. I think that's it, unless there are any questions.
All right, well, thank you very much. So then, are there other items 11.2.1 in the written document that managers are going to speak to us about, or if the commissioners have any questions about any items in the written report. I actually had a couple. So under the facilities, finance and facilities report, I didn't know what a couple of things, abbreviations mean. There's reviewed all items, all submitted PM checklist is PM. What is the PM? And also the reviewed JHAs. I don't know what that means. Hi, Dave.
Hi. Is this on? Okay. So PMs are preventative maintenance programs.
Oh, okay.
And then the JHAs are job hazardous analysis. When people have ergonomic issues that we can't satisfy with the regular equipment we have, we call in the insurance company to do a job hazard analysis on their workstation and give us recommendations. So.
Okay. And then one more question is, begin to remind city facilities managers to capitalize for building improvements at our libraries. How does that work?
With emails.
Oh, okay.
So yes, I have been contacting slowly my equivalents in the city departments as things arise at the different buildings and remind them that maybe thinking about capitalizing for improvements in those buildings would be a wise idea since we're all working on our budgets right now. So just kind of trying to encourage them to not neglect the library.
Good job.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? So some of these positions have been closed. Now, do we have candidates pending filling some of the vacancies?
Leilani from HR is going to come in and give you an update.
Thank you.
So yes, I agree. It's a very extensive list of positions, especially for the librarian 1 and 2 positions. We had the multiple listing for 8 branches. We filled 2 of them internally. And then what we're doing is we're strategizing on how to do core group interviews for the first round. And then for the second round of interviews, we will be doing smaller interviews with the branch managers and some branch staff to more target the types of specialties they need at their branches. We do have, I don't know if you saw on the staff updates, we have chosen a candidate for the HR position. That person is tentatively starting next week. So that will help with a lot of the recruitments. We also had interviews for the collection services position today. We completed testing for the building mechanic 1 positions last week. We'll be inviting people back for first round interviews on that position. I know for the supervising library specialist, we've had a transfer and we're waiting for the announcement until we can open up the new position on that one. Managers are reviewing applications for most of the rest of them. And then some postings, they have closed, but we are still starting to compile all the position applications and do minimum qualification screening before we send them to the hiring managers.
Okay, great.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And I just wanted to commend the library for everything that you do. It's just, it's just amazing to me, and I believe the rest of the commission, about how much you get done and how many activities are happening all the time. So it's great that there's so many collaborations between the library and schools. I think that's really increased, and that's really terrific. And it'll be interesting to see what the audit of the adult literacy program shows. I know that that's also a very active area and very well received and needed in our community. And you have this week, there's a event at Adult Literacy, is that correct? There's a Adult Literacy Holiday Open House. And that's open to anybody who wants to stop by and see the program. And all right, great. Oh, Commissioner McKenzie.
Just a quick comment. Interim Director Gray reported about her presentation to the Amalie High School Ethics Studies class. I was kind of curious how that invitation happened, and I just love the fact that you were talking about libraries as a cornerstone of democracy in our communities with all that's going on in our national government. And I just think it's such a critical conversation. And I wondered how we could get you into more schools or other staff going into more schools and talking about this. It's just critical.
What? Thank you. And also, I did want to, I was very interested to read about the collection HQ update and this software that's going to help really kind of bring our collection more up to date. It sounds very intriguing and very interesting in how it's going to work. So I did have one question about that. So it identifies and evaluates, you're going to identify and evaluate items that haven't circulated in 4 years or more. So I think that probably is easy to find them through the collection. You can see what hasn't been checked out, but then it doesn't sound like all of them will be discarded. It sounds like they'll be evaluated to determine whether some of them should stay on the shelves or not. And I was just curious about that. I like the thing about the grubby items being reviewed, because I know people who are like, oh, sometimes I just don't want to check that book out because it's really not in good condition. So thanks, Jamie.
Sure. So the staff have been strongly encouraged to weed or discard the materials that have not circulated in 4 or more years. There are some reasons that they might make an exception to that. There is an evaluation, and we do respect the staff's professional judgment in looking at each item. Most of the collection check reports were fairly short, meaning there weren't a lot of materials that haven't circulated in 4 years. There were a couple branches that did have lengthy reports, but most of them were pretty clean already. And yes, as far as the grubby item reports, we're really trying to pay a lot more attention to the way materials look, not just how they're checking out and how much usage they're getting, but just the way they appear. And we're trying to put some more things in place to inspect materials, their physical condition when they come back in from circulating, as they're being reshelved, checking them at that point. There are some materials on our shelves that don't look very nice, and we are trying to address that.
Great. And one thing occurred to me recently with a CD, a book on CD, and many of the discs were very scratched. And I did stick a note back in when I dropped it back off, but do those kinds of things get reviewed and replaced too?
Yes. Of course, we have to be made aware of a problem. Sometimes you can visually look at a disc and it appears fine. So unless a patron tells us, it's not playing properly or it looks pretty scratched up or something like that, we wouldn't know. But if we know, or if visually it's obvious, then we pull the material. We have a machine that we use to clean discs. So we'll attempt that first and put it back into circulation. If we receive a second complaint on something, it does get discarded.
Okay, well, good. Good to hear how this is working. Question from Commissioner May.
I have a question about the Together at the Table events. I'm wondering who is going to facilitate them? Will there be a facilitator at each branch, or because part of what I understand about the topics is they are topics that are controversial, and I'm hoping that there's good facilitation.
So I'll be our facilitator at all of the events, and then each of our partners will be sharing information about their specific organization. So it's more information sharing exactly what their organization is, where their footprint is in the county, and then what their organization or agency is doing to affect that topic. And then we'll open it up for questions at the end. But I'll be kind of moderating the series of events, the agenda.
Go ahead.
Hi, Angelina. A follow-up to that is there was a letter to the editor about who selected the voices that were going to be heard, and I'm sure you saw the letter to the editor, and I wondered about the selection process and whether we're trying to do a balanced
for the immigration, I believe that was specific to the immigration topic. So we chose our local agencies, so county departments that are working and affecting that topic, and then local nonprofits and agencies that are providing services or information in different communities. So I know the letter to the editor, one of the perspectives was that there wasn't enough bearing perspective, but we left it to agencies, nonprofits, and organizations rather than just individuals. Like I said, it's information sharing. So it's the agencies sharing exactly what they're doing in that topic. So for immigration, we chose the Sonoma County's Immigration Initiative. So under the Sonoma County Supervisor's Office, the Sheriff's Department, as they're commonly in our news and affecting immigration, Catholic Charities, they're the largest agency providing immigration services in Sonoma County. We have My American Dreams, which is a local nonprofit developed by immigration attorneys, and then Sonoma State's Chicano and Latino Studies to give the historical perspective for what it looks like in Sonoma County. So also for the interest of time, we can't have 20, otherwise we'll have a much longer conversation than anticipated. But as I said, it's information sharing to organizations that are affecting that topic kind of at a larger scale with the footprint in various communities in Sonoma County. Did you?
You didn't happen to respond to the person who wrote the letter?
To the letter of the editor?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah. I was just curious what her concern was and whether you had other concerns about this maybe wasn't a balanced enough group or something.
No, I've responded to patrons who've contacted me or the library specifically, but on that there wasn't contact information, so I didn't respond.
Questions or comments? All right, thank you, Angelina. So that takes us to the monthly financial report, 11.2.2.
So the financial report begins on page 72. Excuse me. It's a pretty normal month. The main thing to point out is that our cash balance, the general fund, continues to go down, and the sales tax cash balance continues to go up. So our cash flow is fine as far as that goes. And we will be getting a big bump in a couple weeks for the first property tax payment. So that's good. There were a couple of things that were over $25,000. You can see down below the PG&E and Chubb insurance. So really nothing out of the ordinary unless someone has some questions. And I just wanted to make a quick comment on the budget process. We received everything from the branch managers and division managers on Thursday of last week. So now we got to get it all together and make sense out of it. So that's happening. It's going along fine. One of the things I'd like to point out, and maybe it goes without saying, but I think it also would help with the advocacy committee. We got the sales tax, and it was great. We needed it. But what that did was really bring us up to the low end of the per capita funding of surrounding libraries. And so we had been without for a long time. So then you look at the priorities that you all came up with, funding the liabilities that have been neglected for quite a while, funding the interiors of the buildings, which have been neglected for quite a while, and then also trying to open more hours. I just think it's important for us to go out there and let people know that we aren't flush with cash. We're being funded at a level we should be funded, should have been funded a long time ago, but we're still funded at a low end of the per capita for surrounding libraries. So, and then the fires happened. So that's going to throw another wrinkle into the budget process too. But I just wanted to make that point so we could all carry it forward to people we're talking to, whether it's our cities, other people. I think we also have to learn that internally because we've been without very much money for so long, and it seems like all of a sudden we have a lot, but it's still low-end funding when you look at libraries around the state. So just wanted to make that point.
Have we, has the county given us an idea of how the impact will be on the library?
There's lots of speculation, but no hard numbers. Hope to get that in the next few weeks. So.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioner Foxen?
Thank you, Ken, for reminding me of that. That was on my radar, but it went.
Yeah.
Anyway, but thank you for reminding me because that is important.
Right.
That balancing that relationship. Yeah. We're a wealthy county, relatively wealthy county, and we don't put the money into the libraries like other counties around us do.
Right.
Commissioner Gardner.
Okay. I agree with what you say because we know you work it more than we do. You live with those numbers. And yes, we are not funded and haven't been for a long time. From Supervisor Hopkins, Linda Hopkins on Saturday, she said that the county's budget will be greatly affected by $17 million this year, December to June, and at least $20 million July 1st. And that all the priorities for the county have changed since the fire, and none of us are in control of that. But even though we have been underfunded, the reality is we can talk about that, but we have lost 5,000 homes that won't be paying their property tax. I mean, the irony is people received, if their mailboxes were still standing, they got their property tax bills, but they don't have to pay them after October 9th because their lots aren't even buildable. But what's coming down the road is that we will get less money because the county is getting less money. And that's the reality. People like libraries, all of those things, but the reality is our budget will be more constricted because of the result of the fires. And her quote was $17 million, and she's just one of 5 supervisors, but that's what she said on Saturday.
And speaking personally as one of the commissioners, I'm willing to rethink our priorities as much as need to be recommended. Our priorities were made before the fires.
Right.
And so we may have to do some thinking on those too.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. That takes us to item 11.3, strategic plan via the OMT status update.
Sure, so I'll just give a brief recap on this, and then if you have any questions. So prior to talking about the 18-19 budget, myself and the operation management team went through the strategic plan line by line. We spent several hours going through the plan to look for priorities that stood out for our pre-planning of budget priorities. The good news is we're really on track with the strategic plan. We're doing a lot of the items as ongoing. There's some updates in here. We've put new target dates, new leads. When I was looking at this strategic plan, when I was analyzing the conception of a new division manager overseeing programs and events and outreach, our strategic plan has a robust part related to that. So that was part of the consideration of that division, being that there's a large portion of the strategic plan related to programming and events and so forth, and outreach and marketing. So we just went through line by line, outlined our priorities, and put those priorities when we started talking about 18-19 budget.
Any comments or questions? Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes. In a general sense, I really appreciate the fact that you did this and the management team worked on this, because it's so easy to do a strategic plan and then it sits on the shelf and gets dusty and doesn't get any follow, and it's really hard to refocus back. So number one, I really appreciate this. I have lots of comments and circles and stuff, which I won't go through in the interest of time. I did want to make one comment, though, and it's about aligning events with the schools. If I can find that. I wasn't aware that we had that as part of our strategic plan, but it seems to me really important. Here it is, page 85 at the bottom. Link library events and classes for youth to the school system's core curriculum. That seems like such a great way to strengthen that school-library partnership. And I do see that it's on track. Let's see, I'm not sure which column that's in. It looks like the new target date isn't for quite a long time.
Quarter 3 of 18, we do still have Kathy and Vicki. We're working on the student one card, educator card. We have a youth education specialist that we're hoping to recruit that will report to the children's services coordinator, that will have a significant role in this part of the strategic plan. So we haven't recruited yet for that position, so hence the quarter 3 18 date.
The Delanna. Yeah, it just seems like, we can add lots of events, but if they're really focused and really connected to the curriculum, it just seems like a great idea.
Can let me just address that for a moment. I would say that many, if not most, of the events that we do are targeted specifically to enhance what students are learning in the schools, in the school curriculum. That the focus that we have on STEAM events, it helps with the process thinking and the project-based learning that they're doing in the schools, and we are doing a lot of that stuff. The output that's really tied to this that we haven't been working on yet for the strategic plan is we have been directed through the strategic plan to that 50% of our events are tied to Common Core strands. And so events that we do, yes, they are tied to Common Core strands, but we have not identified them as such. And so it's that kind of, the way I've been approaching this is, yes, we are doing this, we are working with schools, we do know what what they're studying and are trying to plan things around, like our National History Day partnerships, things like that we really are working with the schools, but the specific tying to Common Core, we have not approached that yet, and we're starting to kind of look at that now as to how to approach that. So.
Other comments? All right. Thank you very much for that. It's good to see all of that work coming together in one place to document it. So that takes us to item 11.4, status update on gift books procedure. Jamie Anderson.
Okay, so my name is Jamie Anderson. I'm the Collection Services Division Manager, and the Commission asked for a status update on our internal procedure around gift books. So I put this agenda item together. Page 97 in the packet is a copy of our current procedure that we're following effective this past May. And I also included a second document which has sort of like an FAQ, a list of possible concerns and responses to our procedure. So there have been some concerns from both members of the public and some of our own staff around this procedure, primarily in terms of how it impacts our relationships with community groups. So we got a small task force together this past September, had a meeting for a couple of hours, discussed the concerns, did some brainstorming, and our group, after exploring a variety of options, concluded that we wanted to continue with the current procedure for this fiscal year, primarily because the Collection Services Department is staffed, and it was planned in the budget for this year to staff the division in such a way to accommodate a certain book budget, a certain amount of materials being purchased and coming through. And when that budget was put together, it was decided not to include gift books as part of that staffing allotment. The operational management team then also discussed the topic and was supportive of the decision that the task force came out with. The conclusions were shared with the branch managers at one of their meetings, and they were asked to share it back with their stakeholder groups, including their friends groups. Another component of this has been the Friends. So as part of this year's budget planning process, the Friends were asked not to contribute funds towards the purchase of books and materials. Again, because we had a 67% increase in our book budget this year with the additional sales tax revenue. That has been challenging because it's an area that the Friends love to give towards. And we also discussed that in our task force and decided that for the 18-19 fiscal year, we wanted to reinstate the ability for Friends to contribute money towards the purchase of books and materials. I brought a couple of items I just wanted to share briefly. Commissioners and other members of the public, they might not realize the process that's involved in taking an item, a book or a CD, and turning it into something that can circulate for public consumption. So just a few things. This is a hardback book, and you can see it gets a barcode on the front cover. The jacket is removed and a plastic mylar is applied and taped on. On the spine of the book, there's a spine label with the call number applied. There's a colored branch sticker designating which branch owns that item. There can be a variety of different stickers at the top of the spine. This one has a new sticker, but there are 20 possible stickers, and sometimes more than one, at the top of the spine. And then on the inside back cover, you'll have a radio frequency ID tag. This is our security tag, and we also use a piece of software to encode this barcode number into that tag, so it can be used at self-checkout. And as far as media, I just wanted to share an example. Book processing is fairly straightforward, but something like a music CD or a DVD or a multi-disc DVD set, like the season run of a show, can get quite complicated. These come shrink-wrapped in plastic that has to be removed. They come in a hard plastic jewel case. We don't circulate things in these hard cases because they don't withstand the book drop. They get cracked and busted up pretty quickly, so we recase all of our CDs into a more durable plastic case like this. We take all of the artwork and turn it into a single piece of artwork like this, again with barcode, spine label, title, author or artist, library logo, genre, so forth. RFID tag is on the case as well as on the disc, or if there's more than one disc, they each get a label. So you can see there's a lot of parts and pieces to just physically processing an item, not even talking about the cataloging. So I wanted to share some of that because it's time consuming and it's costly. We do have a staff that we pay to do this work, but we don't have enough of staff to accommodate all the materials that we buy. So we have relationships with vendors where we pay them a fee to catalog and process our materials for us. It's very reasonable. We could not get all of the materials through our department in a timely fashion if we didn't have these vendor relationships. So the majority of what we purchase, as far as new books and materials, the majority are processed by these vendors, and the minority is processed in-house by our own employees. I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Hauser, then Commissioner McKenzie.
Early on, you said you did not include gift books in the staffing allotment. I didn't quite understand what that meant. Could you explain that a little more?
Yeah, so around this time last year, when all the managers were preparing their budget requests to go to our CFO, part of what I proposed was enough staffing to be able to accommodate the additional book budget that we were anticipating. And again, not thinking about any kind of change with our gift books. At that time, gift books were flowing freely to us from all the branches and were being added on a regular basis. When that budget was put forward, there were some conversations between myself, the current director, the executive leadership team at the time, and we talked about ways that staffing that I was asking for could not be quite so much. One of the ways that was that the group felt was appropriate was to scale back on the gift books. So bottom line is, if we were to put the procedure back to what it used to be, I would need at least an additional half-time staff person.
Okay, so it would be an extra cost to continue the gift books program. My next question is are the gift books coming only from friends, or do they come from individuals?
Both.
I guess my last question is, if they're coming from friends, I'm assuming they're not donating the physical book, they're donating the money to buy the book? No, it's physical.
It's both.
So if they're donating the money, wouldn't that be able to run through the vendor program just like other purchases?
Yes, it would. That's what we would like to do. That's what we would like to put back into place for next fiscal year.
And on the hardcover little book you had there, what's the difference in cost between staff doing it on a breakdown and the vendor doing it?
It's been a couple of years since I did a cost analysis, but
that's okay.
The vendor that we're using for books can do it around $3.50 per item. Yes, $3.50. That's with us supplying them with the RFID tags and the barcodes and the things that are customized to us. If we were to do that in-house, our salary, our benefits, our space, our infrastructure, I think it would be at least double that.
I appreciate the process that you went through, and I think it's really good to have gone through this whole airing rather than kind of that decision, that we heard about. So I'm glad this has been more fully, aired. And my question is, the concern, accepting donations is a service we provide to the public. Response, yes, and it's a service we're still providing. All donations are welcome. I'm confused about what that means.
It means if someone comes in and wants to give us a book, we say, thank you so much. We really appreciate you thinking of the library. We don't necessarily launch into our internal procedure that will go on after that around the decision-making behind if we're going to add that book to our collection, if we're going to give that book to our friends, what ultimately is going to happen to that book.
In all probability, though, we're not going to catalog it and bring it into our collection, right? So is it somewhat misleading if we, what?
I don't believe it is. We have a gift policy that states that, we accept book donations as well as monetary donations. And once books or materials are given to the library, it's within the library staff's discretion as to whether, to add it to our collection. This is pretty standard with public libraries.
So would you say the vast majority of these are going to the Friends then to run through the book sales?
Under our current procedure this year, yes.
Okay.
There are, exceptions in regard to things by local authors, things for our special collections. You saw the list of exceptions.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
Other comments or questions?
I do.
Commissioner Neff?
If you get a hardcover children's book without a dust jacket, which is a direct replacement for one that's worn out, so you have to add a barcode, an RFID tag, and the spine labels. What's that cost? I mean, clearly that's a lot less than $25.
It would be.
And why are you waiting to the next fiscal year to accept money from the Friends groups?
It's my understanding the Friends groups have already been consulted about money and budgets for this year. I thought they planned on an annual basis. Branch managers went to them annually to discuss their needs and their budgets. Is that not correct?
Well, the question comes up is, why are the Friends working so hard to do book sales and just putting the money in the bank?
I can answer that. The Friends, at the beginning of, or was last year, talking about this year's budget, the branch managers each put a wish list to give to the Friends of what they would like the Friends to support for this fiscal year. And pretty much, I would say most of the branch managers have an allocation of that. And then any excess, and it's based on what the Friends said their estimated revenue would be for this year. So that was the conversation that happened between each branch manager and the Friends groups. If the Friends had any excess money or had more revenue than they planned, it may be in the Friends bank accounts and so forth that could be used at a later date. But as far as I know, all the branches went through and had an itemized list that their Friends approved to use their funds for this year.
All right. Thank you very much, Jamie. I know this took some time to put together, and I think that I really appreciate that we have a more clear understanding of the process. And so these frequently asked questions on page 98, those are what the branch managers put forth mostly, or is that from the public as well?
These were concerns that came to my attention mostly from staff and also staff concerned on behalf of the public, yes.
Okay, great. So these are good. This is helpful to when we field questions too from the public. And so I think, we've started this book rental process just recently. And so we'll hear maybe by the end of the fiscal year how that's going. Will that be enough time to give us a report on how that's working out?
Yeah, we started that in August, so we're going on about 3 months right now. It's going well so far, and if the commission would like a report on that at the 6-month point, 9-month point, I can do that.
Yeah, it would just be interesting to hear how it's filling the needs of the collection and how responsive they're able to be when people request, the latest and greatest book. But anyway, thank you very much for the time and effort that you've been putting into this and for working to improve our system.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to 11.5 Roseland Building Project Update. And that is Gray, Director Gray.
I don't have a whole lot to report. There was a meeting this morning. Commissioner Whistler attended, CFO Neiman, Facility Manager Tasheba, myself, representatives from the Boys and Girls Club, the Community Development Commission, some of the planners of the Roseland Village project on Sebastopol Road. The plan going forward, the takeaways from the meeting were we discussed the civic building portion of the Roseland Library, the possible joint use with of the space, not the joint use of the room, but how to break up the building for the library use and then the Boys and Girls Club. The other takeaway was the plan is probably to start that project a year from now. So that gives us an idea of us needing to find a temporary location before then to have a temporary Roseland Library while that site is being built. And then the ongoing discussion, there was not a representative from the Roseland Coalition. They've been the major citizen-led fundraising group to raise money for the purchase of the building. They have met with the city of Santa Rosa. I was at one of their meetings. So much has changed since the fires, and any possible contributions that were going towards the Roseland Coalition. I haven't met with Pat Kuda, who leads that coalition yet, for an update. But there's so many unknowns, I think, right now, especially related to the financial aspect. But that's the update on the meeting from this morning.
Any comments or questions? Okay, so thank you very much for that. And that takes us down to item 12, the action items by motion. The first is 12.1, authorize interim director to sign phone system upgrade. Sure.
Second.
I'm second.
So who's
He can
the
have it.
second?
He's older than I am, so you can have a second.
Okay, so Commissioner May. All right, are there, do you want to come up and give us a little bit of...
I just want to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, Commissioner McKenzie.
Just for the record, I know it's budgeted, just for the record, could you just briefly explain the rationale for a whole new system, what the problems with our system are that we need to...
Sure.
Yeah, just for the record.
I can start by explaining that the current system that we have is a system that is what we call voice over IP in the cloud. So what that means is that there aren't on-site servers and routers that can help control the quality of service that we're getting. So when someone calls, you've probably had this experience at the library. I know that Commissioner Heavenridge has had that experience many times. It's kind of like when somebody's driving into a bad cell area. Unfortunately, that's the way of how this works. These voice over the internet
phone systems that are in the cloud like this are designed for much smaller organizations that are not spread across the expanse of a county like we're spread across. I've upgraded the infrastructure, as you all know, over the last year and change, and even that has not helped change the problems that we're having with this phone system. A couple of things I want to say about that, and first of all, the situation has really changed in the almost seven and a half years that this system has been in place. First of all, when the system was obtained, there were some decisions that were made about free telephones. Well, let me just say that again, free telephones. So the phones that we have right now, if you were to go buy them, if you could find them, they retail for about $200 and some dollars a piece. You know, we've expanded the staff since I've been there. I've just decided a moratorium had to take place on buying more of the free phones. The quality is abysmal. I don't know what else to say about it. Had I been here when this decision was made, I would have made lots of recommendations against this kind of system for our organization. So what's going to happen here is that the phone system that we're going to put in is redundant. What does that mean? That means that if one part of it goes down, the other part picks up. So now that we're going to have the administrative services facility in Roner Park, we're going to put one of the servers there, and then the other one will be in downtown. So what this means is if we have something happen like we did during the fires, we'll be able to have phone service and internet service, because the phone service that we're putting in will assist us with that. What else can I say? I think that we're making a decision using the infrastructure that I've already built on. We're using a Cisco-based system. You know, in IT, we like to try to keep all things the same, because if you keep things the same, the brand and the functionality, usually you don't have conflicts with how things work. If we were to choose another system from another company, that means we'd have to put in some proprietary routers and things like that. And I'd like to just keep this pretty vanilla and pretty industry standard. So, and if you look around the county of Sonoma, most of the phone systems that are in the county are Cisco phone systems. So I use some of those benchmarks, plus I've done one of these a time or two, and I just happen to know that the Cisco systems company is probably not going to go away tomorrow or the next day or be bought up by the next deal that goes through, whereas some of the other competitors, they've been bought and sold so many times, and like the system that's in the city, this company was just recently sold. So again, I like to stick with the standard and a known commodity. This phone system, I promise you, we'll put it in and it'll still work 10 years from now. It really, really will. The phones will.
Could I just ask, could you remind the commission when we purchased the previous phone system?
Yes. 2009, 2010 was the time frame in which you purchased the last phone system. And at that time, there was a program called the E-Rate that basically gave discounts for these kinds of services. I think the initial outlay overarching was about $209,000 of the library system's money, if you calculated it in dollars and cents. There was a lot that was received for free. The E-Rate program is a program with the Federal Communications Commission that basically gives discounts on telecommunications for schools and libraries and rural hospitals. We're still being able to take advantage of that, although the provision for voice has been removed now. So we can't get any discounts for voice except using the California Teleconnect Fund, which will pay for the connections, the pipes, that help us pay for the telecommunications for voice. So, but in real dollars, in 2009, 2010, the initial outlay was around $209,000. So if you just think about today and inflation and so forth, it's not wildly different, except we're getting a wildly nicer product that we can count on. And things like E911, electronic 911, really will work in this system. I think all of you are confident that safety is really important, especially after these fires. And I'll just give you an example of, with the existing phone system, we had an emergency in the Guerneville Library here less than a month ago, and because of the way the current system works, the person dialed 911 in the library and they were connected to the Santa Rosa Police Department. Well, you need an ambulance in Guerneville. You don't want to call the Santa Rosa Police Department. You want the E911 service to call the Sheriff's Department in Guerneville and get you connected with ambulance services in the community where you are. So this system also has that kind of capability that's built, into the software, and you can even take that down to zones. So like in a bigger library like the Central Library, you can say, for example, you can say the reference area and the adjunct reference area as zones. And so when you dialed 911, honestly, the emergency services people would come to that specific zone of the library. So was that helpful? Does that help explain more about what we did back then?
Yeah, I remembered it differently because I thought it happened after I was on the commission, and I wasn't on the commission until 2011.
I went searching through files, and as near as I can tell, 2009 was when the start of the investigation took place for the phone system. And then in 2010, it was actually purchased in that fiscal year. That's what I could tell, because you asked me the other day to look into that. And, Ken helped me. We searched through financial records and so forth. I mean, we were burrowing into the files trying to find what we could.
Okay.
Tim?
Commissioner May.
Yeah, do you foresee that there's going to be some need to bring up staff to the new phones? Will there be much change in how things work for them? Or
I think actually the interface for these phones, for the Cisco phones, and which is why I provided such detail, is that honestly, they're a lot. The usability factor is higher. In my last implementation of such a system in Southern California, we had quite a cadre of octogenarian volunteers, and most of those folks were, we had a 2-hour training session. They were amazed at how easy the phones were to use. I think that the usability factor with these, it's more intuitive, it takes advantage of software development, how people read from left to right, that sort of thing. And you'll be welcome to join in and attend the trainings that we'll be having once we get the project schedule going, assuming that we can go forward with this. Also, I think there are some modern technologies that are built into this system, such as instant messaging. So let's just pretend for a second that we had an active shooter situation in one of our libraries. We could actually utilize the phone system to alert one another silently that things were going on and so forth. So these are kinds of things that you don't want to talk about publicly, but you got to think about, working in a public agency. Yeah.
Well, and also as I'm reading the descriptions here, we can actually do video conferencing with this.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Probably using WebEx, I assume.
Well, using WebEx or using the system that we currently have right now, which is, it's called Zoom.us.
Oh,
but
so Zoom's
yeah, Zoom. Zoom is what we're currently using, just simply because it's really less expensive for now. We will be able to, if we wanted to add the WebEx, the capabilities built right into the routing infrastructure of this tool. I want to just say one last thing about this system that we're purchasing or that I'm proposing. One thing that can't happen in a system like what we've got is called quality of service. So this is a technology that can actually be turned on in the routers. And let's just say that one of the branches, maybe we're getting a little jitter or that kind of thing. We can make adjustments and make the voice quality better. We have no ability to make the voice quality better. We have to rely upon the vendor. And I might just add that the company that we're working with is called Jive. I always have to smile because it makes me think, wow. Well, you can just think what I'm thinking. Jive. And we have not had that great of service. I shouldn't probably be on TV saying this, but it hasn't been the best experience I've ever had with the voice over IP system. And I care about the fact that things happen like today. Someone called at the Rohnert Park Library and they asked to be transferred to a specific staff person, and they ended up at a wrong extension, and it just, stuff like that just keeps happening, and there's no controlling it. It makes me crazy.
Commissioner Neff, you have a question?
Does this phone system give every extension a real-world phone number?
In this particular case, we won't have every extension given a real-world phone number, but most of the, for example, the branch manager, the reference desk, these kinds of things, because there is when we get direct inward dial, when we apply for those, first of all, in a place like Sonoma County, the number of numbers that are available is limited. So we're good, and also there is a cost associated with that. So we're going to have, I think we've proposed about 100 DIDs, and so that what we're talking about here is, if you want to call me right now, you call the main library number, and then you punch in my 1547 extension. Well, what we will have in many instances is the ability for you to just dial my 10-digit extension and get me directly, rather than going through like the recorded calling system, the menu system. It's called an auto attendant, if you really care about that kind of thing. But it can both be helpful and annoying at the same time if you just want to get me. And you have to listen through the auto attendant, and you're like, really? I just want to talk to Vicki, so that this will enable that.
Okay, the second thing is looking at the first page with all the finance numbers on it.
Yes, sir.
There's 2 5-years, one for equipment, one for labor. Okay, will there be any other additional annual cost for this hardware?
Well, for this software, there won't be any additional further costs. We will have annual costs for what are called the SIP trunks. That's the telecom piece of this that is going in, and that cost will be similar to what we're paying right now on a monthly basis for much lower in service. So we will have the telecommunication costs. That's where we'll get the break of about 25 to 40% from the California Telecommunications Program, which applies to libraries. So the costs here is the support costs from the vendor. And if you look at the support costs from the vendor, basically their premium service over a 5-year frame really amounts to about $15,000 per year. And let me just say to you, if we had to hire a telecom engineer, you wouldn't get by any cheaper than about $100,000 plus benefits, because that's the going rate for these guys and gals. And so we really, again, this is a managed system, and we can work with this vendor to learn. And this is the same, interestingly enough, they were the lowest cost bid on this thing, and it's the same vendor that helped us put in the initial infrastructure. And our staff has learned a great deal by working side by side with these folks, because they're willing to teach at the same time that they do for us. And so, another good reason to utilize besides the lowest cost. Now, is Cisco the lowest cost IP phone system you can buy? No, it is not. And I'm just telling you that. I'm a real straight up gal. So, but if you talk to the CIO of the Rohnert Park City, Dave Rowley, he will tell you the same thing. And by the way, he is one of their references, Commissioner McKenzie. So, if that helps to know that, we did get references on these folks. And the reason there aren't libraries listed as references on here is because many city libraries get their telecom from the city. So the city is the direct reference, or a school district will get, this school gets their telecom from the district offices. And so that's why you're seeing with these references here that, well, where are the libraries? Well, the libraries are part of the cities. There aren't that many JPA libraries around this state. One of the JPA libraries that I worked for was in Buena Park, and similarly I put in a phone system there, a much smaller one branch type system. But again, you want to put these investments in there, and this truly, folks, is a great investment in the future of the library. We're trying to get the basics done, like Ken was talking about earlier here. And I just want to thank you for trusting me with, this decision making.
Any other comments, questions?
I'm going to mark my calendar for 10 years from now and make sure
That's all right. Go on ahead. And then you can come get me with a stick. I promise you, it'll be working. The very first one of these systems that I put in Maricopa County, Arizona, I did it in 2003 at the very forefront of the technology for this. They're still running the same system. The only thing they've done is change out the servers. And we will have to change out the servers, but the phone system will still work. And in 5 years, that's the life, 5 to 7 years with these kinds of servers. They're going to have to get changed out. But if you maintain it.
I appreciate the thoroughness of your presentation and the information you gave us and the documentation.
Well,
Thank you very much.
I want you to have it, and I know that particularly Commissioner from Windsor really likes the details. So I try to honor his need for what do we call this? Our geekiness, because I'm a geek too, and I want to know what kind of phones we're getting, and I want to know that they're going to hold up over time. So
Thanks.
Okay, so comments from anybody? Okay. So that takes us to 12.2, approval of search.
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do. We have a motion on the table. Sorry, Vicki, you don't get to. So we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. So that now takes us to 12.2, approval of search firm for library director recruitment. And as the commission knows, we have a search committee, and that is made up of myself, Commissioners Foxen, Garcia, May, Neff, and from the outside, former Commissioner Hillary Smith. It's a hard one. Hillary Smith. And we also receive assistance from our HR director, Suzanne Silva. So we spent a lot of time on this, and we come back to the commission now after our process that you can read about in the background, and request authorization to move forward to work out an agreement and hire this firm. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Who did the motion?
I'll second.
So who did the motion?
Paul.
Okay.
Paul.
So Paul and Paul Huffenridge and Tim May. Okay. Any discussion or questions?
I had one question. Did we check the references of this organization?
Did we check references?
Yes,
we
references
did.
that they listed here.
We checked references with the help of our assistant.
And were they?
They were good.
Positive. They were
Yes.
thumbs up.
They were
Thank you, Jane.
terrible, but we're going with them.
Any other comments or questions? Concerns? Okay. We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. And that takes us to item 10.3, which was moved from the consent calendar down to this position. And that's revised salary schedules for represented, non-represented positions, the cost of living adjustment. And Commissioner Ebright had requested this be removed, so could you speak to your concerns?
Yeah, my main, a couple of points. One, I think that cost of living increases, cost of living allowances are appropriate. And they're appropriate for all staff since we all live here. But what I find, or that troubles me a little bit, is that the SEIU cost of living allowance of 3% is a negotiated rate. We've negotiated that with SEIU. And it's based on probably a number of things, but some of the people who are doing negotiating will then benefit from this. So that troubles me a little bit. So the people we have management here who are represented employees, that always strikes me as a little bit curious. And so that's my main concern. One is that this is a negotiated rate as opposed to based on something like the Consumer Price Index or Social Security, which is 2%, I think, this year. So I'm not saying I want to change this. I'm just saying the background material troubles me more than anything else. The library has personnel policies and agreements for some of its management and confidential employees who are unrepresented. This action modifies those policies and agreements to ensure that the terms of the agreement with SEIU apply to unrepresented employees. Rather than institutionalize this, I would like to try and keep our management staff and our represented staff separate. So those are my concerns. I don't have a real problem with 3% COLA. Like I said, I think everyone should be entitled to that. But tying these two things together, a negotiated cost of living allowance entered into by some of the people who would possibly benefit from this, I find a little disturbing. And like I said, I'd like to keep these things separate rather than move them closer together. So those are my comments.
Are you proposing that we have two motions? One motion that says we approve well, are we just changing? We're just changing the management people, right?
Management non-represented.
The SEIU is automatic, so we're not approving that, are we?
You have to approve the salary schedule.
Okay, so we have to have a motion to approve the SEIU thing, and then you're asking for a separate motion that doesn't say as supported by that, but we're just giving them a 3% to the other folks. Is that correct?
That's what I would like to see, yes.
Can you propose a,
I move that the Commission provide a 3% cost of living increase effective January 7th, 2018 to management and non-represented staff.
We also have to propose the other one too.
So,
and that we
should table the existing motion and take them one at a time. Is that okay? Does everybody approve that?
Is that going to be an issue with the paying of the COLAs? I mean, if we wait until
Are you proposing waiting until
the January?
I'm just saying right now, tonight,
Until the
we have two different motions. We just changed the language and have two motions. I think that's what it's saying.
Yeah. Right. I mean, if you approve them tonight, we have no problem starting them paid in January.
Is that what you're proposing?
So you want
Okay,
to...
so we need to have somebody write out
this motion, or there are two motions we need. One to approve the SEIU agreed upon cost of living salary schedule. That's one motion. And the second is to give the non-representatives and management a 3% cost of living wage. So those need to be formalized as motions.
But we have a motion on the floor. What do we do with that?
We haven't moved on this. There's been no motion on this yet, I don't believe.
Who's our expert on procedure?
Did somebody make a...
Withdraw the motion. Okay, since I made the motion, I withdraw it.
Thank you.
Okay?
And now I move that the Commission approve a 3% cost of the living increase for management and non-represented staff.
I second that motion.
And then you do another motion for...
Well, first we need to vote on that.
Right, I understand. I just was drafting the next proposed motion. But, so the motion on the floor, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Ebright, you move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve the revised salary schedules for the management non-represented, and just take out the both. Management non-represented employees that reflect the 3% cost of living, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
And then we do a separate one that substitutes the SEIU represented employees.
We have
Okay, so on the floor we have the management non-represented employees that reflect the 3% cost of living increase that is effective January 7th, 2018.
It's been moved and seconded.
Seconded by who?
Commissioner Hauser?
Okay.
No, Tom.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None.
second motion?
So the first one for the management non-represented passes unanimously. So do I have a motion?
I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve the SEIU represented employees salary schedule.
Second.
So who seconded that? Commissioner McKenzie. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that also passes. Thank you. Clean. So there are no action items by resolution. We do have a lab appointment that I understand is the cover sheet is corrected.
How was the cover sheet corrected?
That apparently that Sarah Lagos is not a youth member. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the term will be to June 30th, 2021.
Second.
You need the Santa Rosa person?
Second.
Okay. Items to include in the commission notes.
Wait, all those in favor?
We need.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's time to go.
It's time to go.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. All right, that carries unanimously. So now we come to items to include in commission notes. Welcome to our new commissioner. What else?
The backpack program.
Okay. The state library report. The backpack program. The move to now proceed to hire a search firm to help conduct the search for director. Other thoughts?
I don't know. I think the phone
That's
system's
good.
pretty cool. Can we put the new phone system in?
Okay, the new phone system, and that will be installed, but by what point do you think? Okay.
Well, I think honestly, fully installed, 90 days, maybe parts of it sooner, like the central library and administrative services HQ, because for safety reasons, I would say that probably by the end of January. I can't say for sure because, it's all about how long it takes to get the purchase order created and then approved and then all of that.
But within about 3 months or so?
I would say fully installed, everybody trained and everything working, 90 days. Maybe,
holidays.
No, even with the holidays. We'll work around the holidays because we have to. Particularly with this opening, with everybody moving down to Rohnert Park, we got to have phones in there. So that'll be endpoint 1. The endpoint 2 will be at the central library, and then the other branches. We'll roll those out iteratively.
All right.
So did I hear somebody say the state library statistics?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
So we'll leave it at that. I'm sure we'll find other things to put on the next agenda. So then, agenda items for future commission meetings. I know we already have a request to review the time frame for the agenda packet, and that is being considered. So I'm sorry, Commissioner McKenzie?
Were you referring to my request at the last meeting?
Right, but we are
carrying
talking
it forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask that we agendize the agenda policy, but maybe we don't have to. It's probably really a protocol. But for example, just as the fact that one commissioner asked for something to be agendized, do we do it? Under city council, for example, at Rohnert Park, there's 5 city council people. It takes 2 council peoples council members to get something agendized. It isn't just as random as saying, I'd like to have that agendized. So,
Yeah, so I've spoken with Commissioner Foxen about that, and it's something that the SOP should take a look at. So ideas on that process.
Okay.
Let's direct to Commissioner Foxen.
Okay, so I won't ask to agendize that topic, but you're going to agendize. Oh, got it, thanks.
And we have some other things to consider too, like the attorney contract and things like that that can affect it. So, so I think it's appropriate to push it forward. So our next regular meeting will be Monday, January 8th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Santa Rosa City Council chambers. And now we can adjourn.
See you next year.
If not before.
Santa Rosa, out there in the middle of everything. Santa Rosa, out there in the middle of everything.
But how the annexation improved my life?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Another great benefit of the annexation of Roseland is infrastructure repair and replacement. This means roads, storm drains, sewers, and more will become the city's responsibility and will be upgraded to city standards. Also, residents now have the ability to vote in city elections, run for the city council, or even be appointed to a city board. That is why I support the annexation of Roseland.